Welcome to Charting with Dan with a C, our weekly box office report. And I'm so excited, Dan, because I got to tell you, you are my favorite person to talk about numbers with.
Oh, I love talking about numbers. It's so much fun.
Yeah. And you have a lot of insight. So let's talk about this week.
Let's talk about this week. Let's look at the top 5, getting right into it. If it looks familiar, it's because there's only one new movie in there. Coco, #1 for the 3rd consecutive week. It dropped 33%, which is a really good hold for any movie, especially when it's staying at #1. This is a movie, Coco is now approaching $400 million worldwide. It's still doing really well in China. It's almost grossed as much in China as it has here in the U.S. It opened in Spain. It's playing well there. And, again, with Coco, this is a story internationally that we're going to have to watch throughout this year and early next year because there's a lot of big international markets where it has not yet opened. This is the movie to watch, I think, also for post-Star Wars. How is it going to hold up? Right now, it's still tracking a bit behind Moana, and it's really going to be whether or not it makes that surge afterwards. It's going to depend how it does over the holidays. It's going to be tough to compete with Star Wars, but it's also not exactly the same audience, so it's really, but you also have Ferdinand coming out. It's going to be very intriguing to see where it ends up, and really where it ends up internationally, because it is overperforming a lot of the other Disney movies like Moana, and even opening higher than Frozen in some of these countries. So it's going to be interesting to watch and see how this does over the next weeks globally as it wraps up its run here in the U.S.
We've talked about this a little bit before. I'm delighted to see the success of Coco, not only because I really, really enjoyed the film, but also because I hope it speaks to, and there is, we know the Pixar slate moving forward, there's a ton of original films in there. I just hope that other people also pick up on that message and are willing to tackle original stories. In addition to that, it's so fascinating to see how it's done worldwide. In terms of here, the audience competing, look, The Last Jedi is going to do massive numbers.
Huge.
But it's a 2.5-hour Star Wars movie, which may preclude some younger ages from going to see it.
And I mean, I even heard from people, I kind of was saying, telling someone else, I can't believe they're opening this Ferdinand movie. It's opening next week. And it's The Last Jedi. It's an animated movie about a bull. It's like, I can't believe they're opening it up. They think it's counter-programming. And I even heard stories from someone that worked here. One of our producers said, well, I have family members who are taking my younger nieces and nephews to see Ferdinand while everyone else goes to see Star Wars for that exact reason.
Yes.
Star Wars, this is a movie that's being marketed as a darker movie. It is 2.5 hours long. It's the longest Star Wars movie. And it may be something that people are saying, well, maybe the 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids might be a little bit too much. And they are going to this counter-programming. So that may actually pay off.
I think it really may. And the truth is, we've talked about this before as well. A kid that age cannot sit through a 2.5-hour movie. No matter how great it is, they're going to get bored.
Yeah, it's difficult. Number 2, again, Justice League. Justice League hit a couple of milestones this week. It passed the $200 million mark here in the U.S. It passed the $600 million mark worldwide. Why is that a big deal? Well, the conventional wisdom has always been that for a movie to make its money back, it has to make back twice its budget worldwide. Justice League had a reported $300 million budget. It is now across $600 million, so it has technically passed that point at which conventional wisdom says it's profitable. But again, it's not gonna make a lot more than it already has. It's running out of steam. It's pretty much out of gas. It's doubtful that it's even going to hit $700 million worldwide, which even a lot of the pessimistic projections put it at 700. It looks like it's not even going to hit that. So let's say it does break even. It is going to just break even, and it's not what Warner Brothers wants.
No, just breaking even is the opposite of what they want, really, because that means that they have not made a profit, but
it's all been for nothing.
It's all been for nothing. It's like they haven't made a profit. They can't declare a loss. It's like the exact zone that they do not want to be in with that film, which is, again, not saying anything in terms of a value proposition about Justice League as a movie, which you and I both agree is better than the last couple of, besides Wonder Woman, entries. However, it is saying something about a value proposition for a studio financially.
Yeah, and I said on the show, I think that the real story behind this and its ultimate performance is going to be its legs. For example, if you look at a movie like Coco, that's the story for Coco because its legs have been phenomenal, particularly internationally. Justice League has had not great legs, particularly internationally. It's really running out of steam, and it's a disappointment however you cut it. So that's going to be something that we see the ripple effects of in the next few weeks and months, I think. Justice League. Not what Warner Brothers wants, but something that is what a studio wants is Wonder. Wonder had another milestone. Wonder passed $100 million at the box office. It's still the number 3 movie. This is the surprise of the fall winter box office so far. Just a 30% drop from last week, which, you know, anytime you have a movie in its second, third, fourth weekend that are taking 30 to 40% drops, you want that, because usually movies are dropping way quicker as time goes on. Wonder, this is another movie like Coco that could very easily play well during this upcoming holiday season, that could see its grosses go forward, you know, another 10, 20, 30, who knows. I don't know what the ceiling on this is, because it's really had great staying power. And again, this is really showing that you can kind of put a lot of family entertainment in the market, and that there are enough dollars to support more than one at a time.
Yeah, this is one that slipped under my radar. I haven't seen it yet, and I will say that the incredible success is compelling me to go see this film. So I will be going to see it. I have one customer right there. I think there's probably going to be a number of people that will want to catch up on this, just sort of about the phenomena out of curiosity in terms of how well it has performed. Also, it says something about the desire and the hunger right now just for a positive movie. It's, you know, hashtag be kind, choose kind.
Yeah, choose kind.
Choose kind.
I mean, this was a social media phenomenon before it was a movie.
Yeah.
So Wonder really showing a lot of legs. And then the one movie that did break into the top 5, the new entry into the top 5, the first one we've had in a few weeks, The Disaster Artist. So high box office, as the title of this video says.
What a story, Dan.
What a story. Opened at number 4, made $6.3 million for a small budget movie like this. That's great. Averaging, it played on 840 screens. It was averaged $7,500 per screen, which was by far the best per screen average of any movie that was not in extremely limited release. We're talking, you know, anything beyond 40, 50 screens. Word of mouth seems to be doing well. Again, this is what you want on a movie like Disaster Artist. You want it to play extremely well when it's in limited release, and then when you go into, you know, a little bit wider 800 screen release, it's still playing really well. $7,500, that's a great per screen average for a movie in 800 theaters, and it's going to continue to expand, hopefully, on that word of mouth as we approach Oscar season. This is positioning itself potentially to be the mainstream breakout of the awards season. I thought it might be last week, looking at how it did, you know, in its first theaters. Now that it's done so well in its expansion, I think there's a pretty high ceiling on this movie.
This is certainly one of the best comedies of the year, and in our review we talked about James Franco's performance. And he has now been nominated for a Golden Globe. I think that this is going to continue to build steam if it gets more awards attention. That always works as great PR for a film, and it's just really good. It's funny,
it's really funny.
I'm glad to see it performing like this.
It's performing great. And then Thor Ragnarok, number 5, it passed $300 million, just the 6th movie to do that at the domestic box office this year. Some other titles just getting started. It's funny, Morgan Freeman started out this year going in style, and now he's just getting started. He got it backwards. That opened at number 10, and then Shape of Water and The Darkest Hour, those both expanded to 40, 50 screens. Huge jumps in business. We're talking 400, 500% over what they did in their small limited releases. I was down on The Darkest Hour last week based on how it had been doing, but it actually had a respectable jump in business when it went wider. So that one may actually perform a little bit better than I'd anticipated.
And also going into award season, Gary Oldman certainly will be getting a lot of attention, and The Shape of Water in total is already starting to, and I think is a big contender for even a nomination for Best Picture.
The Shape of Water is a movie that 2-3 weeks ago was a fringe contender for Best Picture, that once the awards, the AFIs and the Critics' Choice Awards, it led in Golden Globe nominations, which, you know, we can get into the Golden Globes, but leading in nominations is a story, and it creates awareness. This is a movie that's gone from fringe contender to front runner in a lot of races in a very short amount of time. That's how the Oscar race works.
Which is pretty exciting. And I mean, I think that's largely due to Del Toro's previously existing position in this industry. It's also a really good film.
It's a really good movie. It's really stuck with me in the couple weeks since I've seen it. One of my favorites of the year, and I think it's it's got the best kind of combination of classical Hollywood and weird, different. I don't know. I think it speaks to a lot of different audiences.
It speaks to a lot of different audiences inside my heart. I'll tell you that. It really does, because it has all of those elements. It loves movies. It's passionately in love with the art of filmmaking. It's a fairy tale. It's about being an outsider. It's so many things that I think many of us ultimately relate to.
Yeah.
Another outsider,
now a Hollywood insider, the top per screen winner this week, I, Tonya, opened to $66,000 on just 4 screens. That's not a bad start in limited release. It's not up there with the $100,000 grosses that you've seen with some movies, but that's not a bad start. This is another movie that picked up several Golden Globe nominations. Margot Robbie is a Best Actress contender for her portrayal as Tonya Harding. So this movie now, December, this is the next kind of crop. Like your Shapes of Waters and your 3 Billboards and your Lady Birds have now all moved on to wide release, and we're getting now to the next crop.
Yes.
Your Phantom Thread, your The Post, I, Tonya. This next group of award show contenders is now starting to take those limited release things and roll out. Molly's Game is going to be another one soon. I, Tonya, well reviewed, good performance. This one, I think, along with Disaster Artist, this is another one that I think has mainstream appeal that could expand beyond, and that people remember. They remember this story.
I think so too. I think it's both. You have a connection. Either you remember that story or you're sort of fascinated by it, because it is crazy, right? Like, first of all, figure skating is thought of as being this very ladylike, delicate sport.
Yes.
And one kneecapped another one. I mean, she didn't do it, to be clear, and watch the film. It's unclear if she really knew that was going to happen.
No.
But still, it's such a violent, brutal act for this very ladylike sport. And Tonya Harding was known to be the rebellious figure in this sport.
Yeah.
Figure in figure skating. It's fascinating to think about, and that's one of the reasons I was excited. But then Margot Robbie, I think her performance is another huge draw, and she's a big star now in relative terms.
She is, and I think it's good timing for I, Tonya, because with 3 Billboards and Shape of Water, I think her name had kind of been lost a little bit in the Best Actress race, and this is kind of putting it back up front, and again with this new kind of slew of contenders. So
very different than the other real life sports drama.
Very very different.
Of the Sexes.
Very Battle of the Sexes, which that's a movie, Battle of the Sexes with Emma Stone, that may have peaked too early.
I think
because now there's really no Oscar buzz around her performance, not that much anyway.
Yeah.
It came out in the late summer, and that may be a movie that is perhaps not sticking around in voters' minds as much. We'll see. Oscar race is a weird thing. Let's look at the domestic chart for 2017. Nothing changed from last week. Depending on its opening, The Last Jedi may jump straight onto this chart next week. The $212 million, that's Justice League's total. That's the total to beat if The Last Jedi wants to enter the chart as a top 10 contender. Regardless, it's going to knock Justice League off the chart, but I don't know for how long. If it takes 2 weeks, actually, it may be Fate of the Furious that falls off. Justice League, I was kind of looking at its numbers, if it's still tracking ahead of Fantastic Beasts as far as domestic numbers. So I think it's going to end up around 225 to 235, which would put it on the chart. So I do think Justice League is going to be on the top 10 U.S. box office hits, but
not for long.
Not for long, and then it might jump back up there. But Fate of the Furious or Justice League, one of those is going to get knocked off by Star Wars immediately this upcoming week. And then let's look at the worldwide box office chart. There was one small change. Thor actually outgrossed Wonder Woman this week. It is now at $833 million, the 7th highest grossing. Does it have $30 million in the tank left to beat Guardians? It might. It might. This is a movie that people are loving. I mean, it surprised me, honestly, that Thor is doing this well. This is a movie that I think even Marvel might say, like, I'm surprised that the 3rd Thor movie, this is not a franchise that had huge steam behind it, but what Taika Waititi did with that movie is really striking a chord, not just here in the U.S., but worldwide.
You know what I think it speaks to a little bit? It speaks to, because this is a movie that just borders being self-meta about what it is, being meta. So I think that we are really reaching the phase in this. Look, Taika is a great director. He's hilariously funny. It's a really funny movie, and it's full of colorful, both literally and figuratively, characters. But I really think pieces of me think that the response is because it is a superhero movie that is aware of what it is, right? And some of the other ones that aren't there yet, that are still sort of like taking themselves seriously in that world are not sort of hitting as much. I'm curious if if this is the tipping point.
Well, and speaking of, let's take another look at that chart, because I mentioned that I think Justice League is probably going to be on the U.S. top 10 chart. If you look at the worldwide chart, Star Wars is going to knock it off of that.
Yes.
And there's no way that Justice League is going to outgross Pirates of the Caribbean. That means that Justice League is not going to be a top 10 worldwide hit. Like, I mean, I'm sure Warner Bros. Was expecting $1 billion gross from this movie. It is going to be outgrossed by Spider-Man. It's going to be outgrossed by Guardians. It's going to be outgrossed by Thor. It's going to be outgrossed by Wonder Woman, which if you would have asked me which of Wonder Woman and Justice League, which one's going to make $800 million plus worldwide and which one is going to underperform at less than $700 million. Well, first of all, Wonder Woman wouldn't have underperformed at less than $700 million. That would have been a solid start. Again, this movie, regardless of profitability or not, just with the lack of steam and excitement for it, is not what Warner's was expecting, and it's not going to be a top 10 hit of 2017, which I would have said you were crazy. If you would have told me that Transformers and Justice League would not be either one of them top 10 worldwide hits at the beginning of this year, I would have said you were nuts.
Oh, me too. But let's take a moment again to celebrate the fact that Transformers is not on that list.
That's a very celebratory thing. 50 Shades is gone. Transformers is gone. Maybe people are smarter than we think sometimes. I don't know.
People are brilliant. We're choosing good movies. We're doing it together. All right. Let's talk about next week.
This weekend.
This weekend, pardon.
Of course, Last Jedi is going to do well. I'm sure we'll talk about how it does domestically in the U.S. But I wanted to look at the top worldwide openings. Now, what movie do you think had the biggest release worldwide of any movie ever?
Okay, so I don't know what the answer to this, but this is the logic that we sort of,
Yeah.
We talked about a little bit before. One, it has to be a movie that was released largely at the same time worldwide.
Day and date. It's a new phenomenon.
Right, new phenomenon, so probably in the last 10 years. When I break it down that way, I think it must be either The Force Awakens or Avengers.
Which one do you think it is?
I'm going The Force Awakens, but I feel like I'm wrong.
Force Awakens. Let's look at the biggest worldwide opening weekends ever. And I couldn't believe this either. The Fate of the Furious has the biggest worldwide opening weekend. Earlier this year, opened to $541.9 million in one weekend. $541.9 million worldwide. Force Awakens is second, Jurassic World third, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, and Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, actually the fifth highest worldwide opening weekend. Bad news, Superman. It's going to be off of that top 5 list as of this weekend, because Star Wars is going to jump in there somewhere. It'd be shocking if it didn't.
Yeah,
it's going to make probably 200+ million here in the U.S. alone. The question is, can it top The Fate of the Furious? Can we set a new record for the biggest worldwide opening weekend of all time? 550 million would do it. It's opening everywhere except for China this weekend.
Yes.
Star Wars, Force Awakens
doesn't do that well in China. Star Wars doesn't do that well in China.
Star Wars is not a big force in China, no pun intended. Force Awakens made about $125 million there, which is not bad. I mean, I wouldn't sniff at $125 million, but considering how it was the 13th highest grossing movie that year in China, Warcraft and Civil War and The Jungle Book and Zootopia all grossed more in China than The Force Awakens did, and it was their calendar year 2016, or I guess our calendar year 2016. So it's not opening in China, but neither did Force Awakens. So the question is, I mean, China was a huge part of the Fate of the Furious. Will The Force Awakens, will The Last Jedi top Fate of the Furious to be the highest grossing worldwide opening weekend of all time? What do you think, Roth? $543 million would get it done.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't. No, I could be wrong, but I think that the curiosity factor, you will never have a curiosity factor like you did for The Force Awakens again, other than before that, I guess it would have been Phantom Menace. Was, yeah. I feel like that was, I could be wrong, and I don't know. I actually haven't looked at what it's tracking at.
Big.
Yeah, imagine it's like, just like.
Yeah, at this point, it's like,
money,
it's going to make all of the money.
It's going to make all of the money.
It's going to make all of the money
this
plus
weekend.
This much. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Do you think so?
I think it might fall just short, if I'm being honest. I don't know if it'll make as much here in the first weekend as The Force Awakens did. It might. We've got 2 years of inflation that could bump it up.
Well, that's true. Okay, so we're
I
not
don't think it's going to be a
accounting-
huge drop either, though.
We're not accounting for inflation. And then
Yeah.
did The Force Awakens, did it have the same release pattern? Did it release everywhere
Except for China.
Except for China, okay. I don't know. If it does, man, that
Yeah.
is a phenomenon beyond what I would have expected. Because to me, The Force Awakens was something like we will, just in terms of what it was, reintroducing this to the world, we'll just never see anything like that again.
You have to know, though, if you're Kathleen Kennedy, if you're anybody at Disney or on the Star Wars
mean, you're
team,
making a lot of money.
You want the conversation behind your movie to be, will it be the biggest opening weekend of all time, or will it just be the second or
Barely,
third
yeah.
Either way, Star Wars wins.
Yes.
So, but that is the conversation we will be having next week, which I believe next week will be the last charting show for the year,
It will
because we'll
be.
be going on the holiday break. So what a week to go out on, because we'll get to talk about record-breaking, maybe, potentially near record-breaking. Who knows? We'll see what happens with Star Wars. It's gonna
Yeah,
be
what
fun.
if people just don't go see it?
Yeah, what if it opened to like $8 million? I think the show would melt down. I think Hollywood would melt down.
I think that would have spoken to, we would have a lot more things to talk about from that
Something
weekend.
weird would have happened. Something happened. I don't know what. Yeah.
Hopefully-
48
hopefully-
states fell into the ocean, and it was
Exactly.
only in like Rhode Island and New Hampshire or
Yeah.
something. I don't know.
But
We'll
hopefully
see.
that doesn't happen,
hope
and
that
everybody
doesn't
just
happen.
goes to see Star Wars. We're going to see it today.
Yeah, that's why we're doing this early.
That's why we're doing this
We gotta
early.
go see Star Wars.
And we're going to have a review on Screen Junkies' main channel.
Tomorrow, Tuesday, the 12th of December. I have the date. It's not just the 12th of December, Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. When the embargo drops for everyone, we will do our review live on the Screen Junkies main channel tomorrow.
Please do tune in for that. Thank you, Dan. This was fun.
It's a good time.
Yeah. We will see you next week, next Monday, to talk all things Star Wars with Mr. Dan Murrell.
So much fun. May the Force be with you.
And I'll